You look good. Ash Wednesday is one of my favorite days of the church. Not because it is a fierce reminder of our own mortality. Did you notice? But because in the reminder of the mortality and the making of the cross, it's about life. You sang a song, old familiar song, Beneath the Cross of Jesus. It comes alive on Ash Wednesday. It happens. Lutherans would rather be not noticed any place, except maybe in the back pew. And that's too bad. Grace to you tonight, and peace from God our Father and from His Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus, who is the Christ. If you think those words are a reminder of your mortality, think of those of us who are placing them on you over and over and over again. I've always liked questions, probably more so than answers, which may or may not have disqualified me for the ministry at some point along the way. In our society, there are too many people, many of whom are written on editorial pages and other things like it, that have answers seemingly to everything, but they rarely ask the right questions. During these Wednesdays in Lent, we will focus on questions. Sometimes I wonder how I got through school, because since I was small, for whatever good or bad reason, I have always liked questions more than answers. They take us further beyond ourselves. We'll focus on questions, what if questions. Children are good at asking what if questions. Adults need to rediscover what if questions. Questions that ask questions about what we think we know, we call them assumptions. And what we think we know about God. Making our Lenten journey together these Wednesdays an exploration, I hope, into the very heart of God. The list of those Wednesdays and those strange questions invite us to come together and join that great questioner of old named Jesus, who asked those who were listening that day, "Who do others say that I am?" And that's easy. Then he gets personal and looks at those who are listening and says, "But who do you say that I am?" And all of a sudden, instead of looking around, we look inside and struggle with our responses. The best questions rarely have easy answers, and these 6 that I'm asking during Lent certainly don't. Some of you will look at them somewhat askance. I invite you to come and give me a chance with them, especially the last one. They're listed in your bulletin. And we'll take a vote on heresy at the end of Lent and see how it went. The imposition of ashes is relatively new to the Lutheran tradition. It didn't happen for centuries and centuries. It has become a gift to us again from our Catholic brothers and sisters. I was introduced to the imposition of ashes not in the folds of Trinity Lutheran Church in Pelican or on campus at Concordia. I was introduced to ashes on Ash Wednesday in New York City, of all places, where I was touring as a lowly baritone in the Concordia choir. We had a morning off before singing that evening in New York. We got a morning to wander. Country boys in the big city. We had no idea what we were doing. And so we wandered into one of the great department stores of America, and we continued not to know what we were doing. Even before that, I hadn't seen many cosmetic counters. I had never seen one like this. I think we referred to them that day as painted ladies, but not in the usual tense. I'd never seen so much makeup in my life. In the midst of the makeup, there were black smudges on their foreheads. And I had the guts to walk up to one of them and say, "Excuse me, but what is that?" Not cool, I realize. She was kind, and she looked at me and said, "Well, haven't you been to St. Patrick's?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, they're ashes." And I knew just enough church history to not ask any more questions. That picture and story has stuck with me. It is a place where I wouldn't have expected to find them even if I knew what was going on. But those women in the cosmetics department of a department store in New York wore them. And I have never forgotten them for that. From Isaiah, the 58th chapter. I'm going to shorten it up. The writer says this, Is this not the fast that I choose to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the things of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break that which binds us? Is not the fast to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see them naked, to cover them, not to hide yourself from them. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. You will be vindicated. The glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and God will say, "Here I am." How many of you are familiar with the tradition of fasting? Yeah, there's more Lutherans here than Catholics for some reason. An ancient tradition in the church. What does it mean to fast? It's an old biblical word. Sometimes it's used before you and I have to take tests, blood tests. Don't eat anything. 7 o'clock till the next morning in Rochester. Fasting to go without no meat on Fridays. It's sort of a modified fast. I never could understand that because if you really liked fish more than beef, it was hardly fasting. Think about it. Our brothers and sisters on this world who are Muslims fast during the feast of Ramadan. That's not one day, that's a month, folks. They do not eat after sun up, and they wait until sundown to do that. To fast means to go without with a purpose. I hear, though rarely anymore, people used to ask themselves as this day approached, "What are you giving up for Lent?" Implying that somehow a way to get ready for this season has something to do with sacrifice. If you were part of those conversations, you know how piddlingly small they were. Well, chocolate. Now, for some of you, if you're like me, that's not so piddlingly small. But in the scope of things, what are you giving up for Lent? And we would try to find something. I remember back in past days, I hope, frequently among men, "What are you giving up for Lent?" And somebody would say, "Well, I'm going to try to stop smoking for these weeks." Most of the time, the things that were said, we shouldn't have been doing in the first place. So what's the sacrifice of giving up something for Lent? It's kind of like yesterday was Mardi Gras. You get all your giving up over with so then you won't worry about giving it up for the next few weeks. Jesus said in Matthew 6, Sermon on the Mount, he looks out at the crowd that was listening to him that day and he said, "And whenever you fast," he didn't say if you fast, he said whenever you fast, which seems to me to suggest that Jesus thought fasting was a good idea. It's just that I'm not sure he thought about that as giving up anything like chocolate or cigarettes or dessert or anything else you and I think of? What if fasting became important? What if it was about more than the little things in our lives? What if fasting could be for everyone's good and not just a form of self-denial? What if the world would be better off if you and I fasted? Obviously, we're looking at something bigger than normally here. What would you be willing to give up for Lent? I'll make it personal. What would I be willing to give up for Lent? We have to go back to the ancient prophet. Listen to this. What does he ask the people of God to give up? Is not this the fast I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke that binds us, to let the oppressed go free, to break every yoke that binds and burdens your people? Is not the fast to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? Is it not the fast that God asks that we clothe the homeless, feed the hungry, care for those for whom injustice has become a way of life? Is it not a fast? It's not about giving up. It's about blessing. So if we're going to make the word fast mean anything, what do you want to give up for Lent? I know I've said that twice now, but you didn't say anything, so I'm going to keep asking. What if we were to, I know this is weird, but what if we were to fast from prejudice for these weeks? What if we were to fast for selfishness and self-centeredness for these weeks? What if we were to fast for mistaken priorities? What if we were, good God, what if we were to fast from political rancor for Lent? Every place. Late night on TV would become, those of you who are old enough, a test pattern. What if we were to fast for telling stories, some true and untrue, about our neighbors? And now this one. What if for Lent we were to fast from certainty? I told you I like questions. I'm not nearly so fond of answers, because too often in our life together, not just the religious life, we're just sure. You can rightfully say, shouldn't we sure that we're loved by God? Absolutely. But that's not what we hear about. Someone has written that the most dangerous attitude of people in the world is to be absolutely certain. And I agree with that. It's what causes wars. It's what causes injustice. It's what's caused prejudice. We're just sure. And we'll take out anybody who disagrees with us. So what shall we do about that? I had a prof at seminary named Paul Sonic, church history prof, interesting man. At the beginning of the term, he would hand out the syllabus and tell us we had to buy 3 books. And then he would announce that there wouldn't be any tests in the class. And you can imagine that somebody raised their hand, wasn't me, who asked Dr. Sonic, if there aren't going to be any tests, why in the world should we read the books? And he snarled, I can't even do that imitation, as he leaned over the podium up front. He looked at that poor kid in the back row and said, because it's good for you. Fasting can be good for us, even if we're not real sure about the books. Ash Wednesday has always been more meaningful for me when I look at very young and very old faces and put the ashes on. When some of you come bringing little ones and are reminded that they too will come to an end sometime. From dust you have come. Those are hard words, real words, possibly painful words. Those of us who do that kind of thing look at older faces and wonder about next year. At a church called Zion in Cottage Grove long ago, I introduced this practice to that very, very young congregation. There weren't many senior citizens in it, and I wasn't sure how either they or the younger people would take to having ashes put on their face. We rearranged the sanctuary. Could do that a little bit here. The pews would be problematic. Just to put the altar in the middle, and people came and tried this brand new thing. The oldest couple in the congregation were Elmer and Irene, late in life. Grandpa to hundreds of kids in that place. Elmer was the last one to come, so everybody was watching, but he didn't realize that. He'd never done it before in his 86 or 87-year life. Sometimes change is tough for them, or for the rest of us. So he came and he looked at me, and obviously he was more capable of looking into me than I was into him. And I shook a little bit as I looked into those precious eyes and did what happened to all of us tonight. And I said, Elmer, from dust you have come, and to dust you shall return. And this ancient saint, totally oblivious to the hundreds of people around him, looked at this dumb rookie pastor and did this. Lord, have mercy. You and I have been marked with a cross that means mercy. The only bad thing about the way we do this here at Good Shepherd is we don't have a day to walk with it on us. Lutherans aren't overly gifted with witnessing in public. And this is easy. I wish it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I truly do, and I don't like coming here at 8 o'clock in the morning. So that you and I could walk around. I could tell the people at 12:10, don't wash it off. If you're eating out tonight, don't wash it off. If you're going someplace, don't wash it off. You have been marked with the cross of Christ forever. That's the only thing that makes some of the fasting easy. Wear it well.